Hello there, and welcome to the next live episode of Delightful Dissent. And this is episode 4, and I'm with Yaron Engler. Hi, Yaron.
Hello. Nice to be here, my friend.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, thank you for joining us. So, Delightful Dissent, if you haven't watched before, is really a series about challenging assumptions, and not just the surface level assumptions, but sometimes the really deep stuff that we don't even think about, because that's often the stuff that can really trip us up. And I'm really interested in these assumptions that hold us back, and helping you find some in your life and maybe work with those in a different way. But I'm also really interested in this practice of doing it, and that's why I like to talk to the people that I get on, is because they've got a practice where they're challenging assumptions and they're pushing something. And I hope that you can find an example of this in your work, and you can push some assumptions and challenge some assumptions too. So the idea of delightful dissent is really that, yeah, this is dissenting. This is about saying, no, something's wrong here. But it's about doing that in a way that isn't negative and actually results in something better for everyone, because that's how we move things forward. We can't just fight against what is, we kind of got to work with it as well. And this is really about engaging, and it's about it's a community thing. Yes, it's a conversation between me and Yaron, but it's also a conversation that you're part of. So please do comment as we go on and engage with this. There'll be a chance at the end for us to answer any questions and explore anything that comes up in the chat. So please do share it as it comes up, and we'll get to it towards the end of the show. So, do ask questions of yourself as well in this. This is your be part of the conversation. So, on to my guests. I met Yaron a couple of years ago now, and actually I'm really grateful to him for showing up today, because with my normal planning ability, we had planned to do this a bit earlier in the year, and it all kind of fell to pieces. So I'm really grateful for him in joining us again now, because it just didn't quite work out the first time, and I'm really excited to talk to him, because we have very interesting practices. We come at some very similar topics, but from quite different directions, and so that's always exciting for me to talk to someone who does that kind of thing, because I learn a lot from that myself. So could I ask you please to tell me and the audience a little bit about your work and the kind of people that you work with, please?
Sure. Thank you, Matthew. And good to be here again. So my name is Yaron Engler. I run one-to-one and group coaching programs for men. The majority of men that I work with are men in leadership roles, entrepreneurs, and it's men who have a trait of openness. They want to open, they want to project more to the world, but something feels stuck. They feel like they're on a hamster wheel. And it comes with frustration and anger and feeling not good enough. And through this work, what we do is we build a vision. And through that, like, what do you actually want to do with life? Kind of to shake things up, because there is no need to compromise. Life can be better than what we experiencing right now. So it's about really going deep into who are you and who do you want to be, and let's make it happen. And it's very challenging, but it's also a lot of fun. So it happens on one-to-one, as I said, on group coaching programs, basically.
That's great. I think one of the things I've really learned over the past few years is how much enjoyment there is in hard stuff. And I think that's a really interesting, for me, that has been a really big thing for me to develop in my own personal work. And I think it's great that you're helping other people do similar things as well. So yeah. Cool. So before we actually get into the meat of it, I always ask my guests to bring a quote along that kind of supports them and launches us into this a little bit. So, could you share your quote with us, please?
Sure. So the one I chose out of many possible was: creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep. And it's by Adams. So I'll repeat it. Creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep.
I think I really like that quote. Could you share a little bit about what it means for you, though?
It relates to what I spoke about before, about the work that I do. You know, for some reason, well, for many reasons, so many of us live life. We have from 1 where life is really crap to 10 life is the most amazing. So we're floating, but most people don't allow themselves to go beyond 6 or 7. It's like, I'm not deserved. I don't deserve this. And I think that, and then there are conversations about subjects like creativity, for example, or things like this. But it's instead of going into it, we're talking about it and we're philosophizing about it. But if we want to make life for real, we need to think about ourselves as artists and in how whatever we want to explore. And I know that art, a lot of times we connect it to sculpture and paint, but for me, art can be anything. You know, I've seen people I've seen cleaners who are artists. You know, I cannot, you know, my wife is a great example. She's not a cleaner, but my wife, the way she can make the house look like a fairy tale, it's like 30 seconds, like, and the whole house is amazing. And there are people who can be artists as chefs. There are people who can be artists as accountants. It doesn't matter what you do, but are you willing to go deeper, to explore things more in depth, and to discover another layer and another layer and another layer? And I think, you know, if I go back to this, in order to make life as art, whatever it is that you want to make out of your specific life, it's about making mistakes. It's about going dirty. It's about doing all these things, but having a clear vision why we're doing this. So this is for me why I chose this quote.
Yeah, that's great. And I think for me, one of the interesting things is to actually allow this creativity and to allow ourselves these mistakes and to allow ourselves our power, you know, to some very real degree, is actually quite a boundary pushing act very often. You know, we're not expected to be that. We're throwing off some of the assumptions and some of the stuff that other people have placed on us, that society has in general, and that's a big thing to do.
I think an important piece for that is the creation of containers where you can actually do this, because to do it in society, a lot of times there are so many expectations, unspoken rules, and all this kind of stuff that we kind of feel that we have to fit in. So how can we create, as leaders, as whatever it is that we are, spaces, whether if it's in my family, in my business, in wherever, space where we can go to those places, where we can go a little bit dirty without that it will be a problem, because I can't just go to the street and go and go crazy, you know. And that, in a way, that's what I do with my clients. I create a very safe space for them that they know we can explore here whatever you want, things that you've never shared with anyone, things that you're thinking about but you don't even have the guts to talk about. And it happened quite a few times with clients who were afraid to tell me what they want, and I kind of like drill a little bit in, and 2 years later they make it happen because it came out. So I think the creation of safe space is crucially important.
It's a huge thing, I think, for me. It's the things that are safe to feel, you know, the thing, and it's safe to enact and actually feel in our physical body is important, if not more important than the things that are safe to think. Almost, maybe the two are quite closely related, but you know, there's something really powerful in that, about creating a space where people can actually open up a bit and make those messy mistakes, but in a very embodied way. You know, I think one of the interesting things when we talk about this, and particularly in the space of work, is we kind of talk about intellectual mistakes, like mistakes on a, you know, it's like mistakes on a test, mistakes in an exam. And that's a very, very different thing from making mistakes in the physical world and with the physical world. But actually, that is the essence of creativity for me on some level. It is a physical embodied thing.
Creativity and learning. I love what you just said, because it's so true. I did, like, recently, the COVID happened, and I thought, like, oh, maybe I'll get like some certificates. I don't have certificates usually. I'm not a big believer in that. But I thought, wow, I did never mind the subject. And I'm noticing, like, wow, this is what certificates are. I was supposed to answer some question by reading something, and it's reminded me of school. And I was a horrible student in school because I don't memorize things in the mind. Maybe I'm not intelligent enough. I don't know. I need to live it. I need to be it. I need to touch it. I need to smell it. So if we're talking about changing of diet, if we're talking about building confidence, if we're talking about getting rid of depression, I've done it because I went in full on, and I was, and that's the invitation also to clients. Let go in, because on the other side you see freedom. From learning about it and intellectualizing it. You'll have a piece of paper that says that you know something, but there is a difference between knowing and knowing. I like the word that you said in the end is the most important word, probably embodiment. It's embody. Who do we want to be?
The way I use language, obviously everyone uses words slightly differently, but I think of knowing as the intellectual thing and understanding as the physical thing. But again, that's it. So yeah, okay, yeah, no, that's brilliant. So okay, so that leads us really nicely to this idea of making mistakes and the assumption that you shouldn't make the same mistakes that I did. And I was very excited when we kind of came to this in our planning conversation, because it actually feels like there's a bit of edge there for me, and that's always the exciting, that when it's something when I'm like, well, okay, there's something there, that's what tells me that there's a really interesting thing behind it. So, but what does this really mean to you? How does it show up for you and show up in the world?
One of my highest values in life is individuality. On a spiritual level, if I may say that on LinkedIn, on a spiritual level, I believe that we are all one, and we can go to that, but not in this platform. But each one of us has a certain blood type, certain body structure, certain history, certain experience, certain traumas, certain joys. And I think what a waste to try to follow other people about their journey, because you have yours. And I think obviously when we talk about very plain things, like let's take it to the basic. Don't put the hand on the fire because you're going to get burned. What, even that, isn't it more profound for a person to feel the heat and get a little bit of shock to learn that, instead of being told that? And I think we're limiting ourselves by trying to, and it's very common in business to say, let me save you the hustle that I had for 20 years. And it's bullshit. Of course, there are things that I can learn from you, but if I don't make my own mistakes, I won't make my own life. I won't make my own business. There are so many of us that just act as if there is a pattern that we need to follow. And we go to that 6, 7 that I spoke before, instead of a life that is 10, a business that is 10. So I think it's important to learn from everybody, to listen to everything, to stay brutally open, even when things are challenging. Like this is something I do, for example, with politics and all this madness of the world. I'm checking, it's very comfortable to go on your Facebook or wherever you are and get the algorithm from the people that you are comfortable with and take the news from there. I on purpose, I'm following people on different platforms that I really don't agree with, but I want to understand. So it is our journey. How can we stay open and listen to everybody and learn from everybody, but in the end go in and make from the inside and really test, who am I in this world, and how can I make sure that when I'm on my deathbed and I'm going to die tomorrow, I look back and I don't have regrets because I was trying to fit in instead of living what I'm supposed to be here. So that's my take on it.
I think there's something really interesting in there, because there is this idea of, like, for me, there's something about like where we're learning, and learning what's already known, and that we're taught through school that we're rewarded for perfecting that. And it's like, okay, that's all the knowledge. If we study hard enough, we can learn everything. We can get all the knowledge, and it is all very abstract. We don't learn what it feels like to interact with these things, or what it means for us personally. It's completely separate and safe and clean and tidy. And I think there is value in that, because we need to share information with each other. We need words and we need this structure. So it's really important that we can share these ideas. And one of the great things about being human and having language is that we can experience these things at one remove if we choose to. But I think there's a big thing there around choice and what matters to you, and that difference between the 6 or the 7 that you're talking about. That, like, the 6 or the 7 for many people feels like the bits of them that are the same as the other people. They're the bits that are common.
Yeah.
And it's the actual uniqueness that really pushes up in terms of where people can not only serve themselves, but really serve other people as well. Because, that's, for me, that's the really important thing about this, is it's about getting good at doing something on some level, we're in a certain way, for whatever that means for us. And that is how we serve ourselves and serve others at the same time.
Yeah. I think an important point is also the unconscious and conscious education that we receive, or messages that we receive about the importance of being comfortable. We are constantly being sold, educated, given the idea that comfortable is the way of life, being comfortable. And that's killing people. The depression and stress that so many people find is because they are so stressed to create something in order to be that comfortable, in order to have the house, the car, the things that I'm supposed to have, checklist, just to discover that when you get them, you're not really comfortable, and it's all these kind of things. And I think, again, creating those containers that we spoke about, this space for people to feel uncomfortable, being fully safe, but go to the uncomfortable, go to that place that is a bit tingly. Like what we, 2 minutes before we do this call, you and I kind of our balls are shaking a little bit. Like, oh,
yeah, it's exciting and scary at the same time.
It will be much more comfortable not to do this. And if I say something wrong, I just said balls. Oh my God, but people will judge me. Fine. Or am I playing? Am I going and playing with life and trying to create something new? And I fell into the trap of the comfortable for many, many years. But slowly, while building awareness, I've noticed, actually, now I can honestly look, what did I learn more of in my life? In the places where I was trying to follow others people's and learn from the mistakes of others to make things easy, or when I went completely to places that were really ouchy and really uncomfortable. What is more in my core now, and in these building blocks of who I can be right now in the world? Definitely the hardship place is much more than that. And in a way, I'm welcoming it right now more. It's a scary thing to say, but I am welcoming it right now, because a lot of times it makes sense to look at the fire, and to I just spoke to in an event today with someone about it, to talk about about something challenging, and then we often look at the challenge, but sometimes we forget, well, why do we do the challenge? What will be after? And focus more on that. And I think that's the key. It's like being more comfortable to be uncomfortable is an important thing to do.
I think there's something really interesting in that as well. There's a kind of projected discomfort. We're talking about you shouldn't make the same mistakes I did, and for me, that there's an element of kind of authority in that statement. It's quite maybe paternalistic almost, feels to me. It's got a certain energy to it, and I think one of the positive thing in that is it's kind of a protective urge. It's like, this hurt me, and when I did it, and I don't want you to be hurt, so I don't want you to do this. And I think there's a very interesting thing in that, and a very kind of laudable urge, but it can be overplayed, and then it does become this kind of stifling comfort almost. And I think, I look around me and I sometimes see people who are almost killing themselves with comfort. That kind of disconnection and numbing doesn't really serve in the long run. And I think, the idea of being able to make mistakes and feel what those mistakes are like in the body is actually a really challenges that and shifts that. And that is quite a rebellious thing on some level to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. You spoke about a few things that triggered some thinking in me. One of them was about when you spoke about this being like a paternal thing. I'm a father of two, and I love my mom, but my mom was always about super protective and comfort and make sure that nothing wrong. The minute I had difficulties, like immediately to help, and that really it screws my life now because I have less capacity to deal with these things. With my kids, and it's probably any parent who is listening to this will probably relate to this, I am on purpose. It's such a difficult decision to make when I won't speak for others, when I see my children having a difficulty, sometimes the natural thing would be to go and help. But I'm practicing on a regular basis not to do it. I want them to, that sounds horrible, I don't want them to suffer. I want them to figure it out by themselves. So if you get stuck, instead of going and helping them, I'm asking them, what can you do? Think, what can you do in the moment? And most of the time they find solutions. Most of the time they find solutions. So that's about the paternal. Another thing that you spoke about this comfort and how everything is around comfort. There are a lot of unconscious things that we don't really think about. For example, if I assume, I didn't have it for many years, now I do have the TV at home. If we think about the Western society, not necessarily just Western, but let's talk about Western society, the common arrangement of a house will be the TV in the center of the shrine of the living room and all the sofas around it. Let's numb our minds. And why? And we keep these structures all the time. It's a really interesting one. What would happen if we change that? If instead of having the TV as such a core pillar of your life, take it out. Try what it is to live without TV for 2 years. And I'm saying this now, I have TV. I didn't have TV for many years now because kids and stuff. So, I'm part of the matrix. But still, I loved this concept when TV companies called me to sell me broadband and TV, and they started to talk to me about the TV, and I told them I don't have a TV, and it took them time to understand. What do you mean? Yeah, we don't have to have TV. All these things that we are being unconsciously brainwashed to think that this is life. But life can be whatever you want to make it.
I think that ability to kind of take what is of value to you from the thing without taking the whole thing is actually a really interesting part of that. And that's kind of what we're saying, for me is like, when we're talking about with children and making the mistakes, we're not giving them no support, but we're giving them space. And it's the same with the work that we do with everyone. And for me, actually, if I think about that for myself as well, it's not, there is nothing here. It's not a step into oblivion, although it does sometimes feel like it. There's someone there who knows this space and who does understand what's involved and can help us when we do struggle or get stuck, and can help us from really encountering anything completely overwhelming, because it's like you want people to be able to make some mistakes, but you don't want those mistakes to be terminal mistakes, and so it's a really interesting balance, and it feels like there's an all or nothing message that we have around this. It's like, I either tell you exactly what to do and you do it, or I'm not involved. And I think there's something really interesting in there about making ourselves vulnerable to the feelings of other people and to our own feelings in that space, and perhaps our own unresolved feelings about what happened to us, because it is a vulnerable thing to enter into, to hold that space for someone.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you're raising, which is very relevant to the work that I do, because I work with men 99% of the time. And that's something, one thing is what we spoke about, don't make the mistakes that I did. But then a lot of us men, even though we pretend that we have all our shit together and everything is under control and we know everything and no problem, we are afraid inside, we are confused inside, we self-judge ourselves, we have a lot of negative conversations often, not always, hopefully, but often. I know it for myself, I know it for anybody that I have an honest conversation with. Yet how difficult is, kind of, if we flip it around, for men to give a call to someone and ask for help, to ask from someone to be loved. There, I say it. Whoa. To reach out and just like, hey, I need something. This is something that for men is so challenging, and I find it fascinating. And again, it's not like I've seen it in myself a lot of times. I'm practicing continuously to, I'm getting better with it. Anytime I have an issue, a problem, I'm thinking like, who is the person I can reach out right now that will help me like solve this? Or it's a little bit like a cloud. It's like, and a lot of times it's just by verbalizing it, like it disappears. So it's kind of on the flip side. On one hand, it's like, don't make the mistakes that I did. But on the other hand, when you're completely lost, can you take the courage to be vulnerable and ask, hey, I'm not all right with this thing. I need some help. I need some advice. I need to just speak it out and do it.
And I think there's, again, what's really interesting is, I think when we say ask for help, it's okay to ask for kind of solutions, and particularly in this working space. And I'd like to think about this, because it is one of the big things for me is about how personal work really is, and how when we separate that ourselves from the work, it doesn't serve us and it doesn't serve other people. So that real kind of asking for help in this way, in this vulnerable way, asking someone else to be vulnerable to some degree, is actually a really, really big thing, because we're kind of trained to ask for solutions. I think I was brought up, certainly at school and in my working life, that basically I was asking for like a nice clear-cut kind of abstract cold decision from someone else. That's all I was allowed to ask for, really. There wasn't actually anything else offered. And so that as an assumption, I think, is really interesting as how we internalize that idea of not making those same mistakes. And how it does make it very, very hard to ask for this different kind of help, this supportive, spacious help, rather than the directive solution provision.
Yeah, it's not easy, because we live in a world that we are all pretending to have all our shit together and everything is okay, especially in an environment like LinkedIn, business and stuff, where you're kind of supposed to show confidence and stuff. It's a cultural change that needs to happen, and I think it is happening slowly. We're on our path. I hope.
I think one of the really big things about my work is I believe it is happening, but it's down to us in our work, if it matters to us, to manifest it. Things will happen around us, but the stuff that we care about, the stuff that we really have love for, is the stuff that when we work on, we kind of create and allow to come into the world and nurture into the world. And that is actually a really big thing, to allow yourself that, and to allow other people that, which is the flip side. This is kind of what happens when you allow this kind of this spaciousness, the love of work and the love of your work into things, is it does allow us to be successful in quite a scary way, for me anyway. And I think when I reflect on when I was setting this whole process up and the webinars and everything, I wasn't actually, if I get really deep down, I wasn't scared that no one would watch and no one would be interested in talking to me. I was actually scared that lots of people would watch, lots of people would talk to me, there'd be expectations and there'd be change, and I'd be kind of responsible for having done something out of my control.
Yeah,
that was what really bothered me.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I have a question for you. What's your definition of success? You spoke about success. What's your definition of success?
That's an interesting one. I don't have a strong personal definition of success. I think it's an ongoing thing. I think it's a process. It's a process of increasing results in terms of what matters to you and increasing opportunity as well. So it's good outcomes, and it's the opportunity for more good outcomes, whatever those mean to you at that particular point.
Nice.
How about you?
I think it's the same as you. The way I define it is living life without regrets, which relates to what you just said. Basically, it's doing all those things. And I think for me, yeah, I spoke about it before. It's looking back and ask myself, did I play this game fully? And it very much relates, I think we spoke about it. There is this very famous article, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, which probably people that listen probably are familiar with. It's just that this article had such a huge impact on me. For those of you who don't know, it's basically about a palliative, you say, palliative nurse?
Palliative, yeah.
Palliative, a woman that worked for many, many years with people who are dying. And she kept asking them, what are the biggest regrets that you have? And the number one by far, there were different ones, like spending too much time at work and not spending enough time with friends and so on. But the first one was with a big gap to the others, and that was more or less living life according to what other people expect from me instead of what it is that I want. And as someone who was lucky and privileged also, I'm not just a great person and genius and so strong mentally. I come from a background, I'm privileged, I'm white, I'm man, and I have to acknowledge it, especially in the current, not especially always, but in the current reality, we finally speak about it openly. But yes, there is this stuff, but still, I chose to do a career as a musician, even though everybody told me not to. And I fulfilled a lot of my dreams, not exactly the way they were supposed to be. There was always a little bit of tweak in real life, but I'm really looking back. It's really important to me to always look back and say, is there anything that more things that I haven't done that I want to do and I'm avoiding? And it comes back to that vulnerability. It comes back to that what we spoke about before, this courage to go to those places. So when I decided 8 years ago to start to go to this direction of coaching and business, I had no idea what I was doing. And it was so hard, and it was so many questions and self-doubts and stuff. And also because I come from the world of artists where people are generally very open and exposing themselves fully, to enter a space like LinkedIn, I shrunk because I'm noticing that, whoa, everybody knows what they're doing, and it took me some time to understand that it's all, sorry about the language, fucking bullshit. And that it's so much of masking and nonsense of non-real plasticky stuff, then exactly what you said. So I slowly understand more and more as I go. I don't need to fit into that, because in the beginning I was trying to put more, like, to dress up a little bit more appropriate and to speak up without saying all these bad words that I'm saying, because, oh my God. But now I understand, my goodness, no. I will be myself, and I will be like a Marmite. You love me, great. You hate me, great. I'm doing my thing. And I know that I believe in my thing because I will go deep and deep and deep into that. Do you want to join? Yes or no? It's totally up to you. But there is no need for me to pretend who I am. There is a way for me to discover who I am, and I'm committed to that. And that's my invitation to my clients as well. I don't care what you think you are. Let's discover what you really are and play with that. And yeah, I had a punchline there, but I can't remember, so I'm going to leave it.
No.
Yeah, success. So I think, for me, So for me, that's the thing. I think I would be very disappointed with myself if somebody would tell me that I have cancer and I have 2 days to live, and I look back trying to please people and myself in LinkedIn by showing up in a certain way that's not provoking. I will regret that. So I'm going full on. And sometimes it's scary. It's really scary. And I'm still learning, and I'm still not doing it fully. But that's the invitation for myself and for my clients always. Let's play with life and with business and with everything to the full. Let's enjoy it. Let's squeeze it and learn and make mistakes and look back and say, like, whoa, that was crazy, but I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting thing in that relationship between success and mistakes for me. There's something really, really telling in all sorts of ways. That we kind of have this assumption, again, related to the implicit assumption that success is the opposite of a mistake. And I think that's out there, right? It's like I made a mistake, or I'm successful. I'm successful, or I failed.
Yeah.
And I think, again, this idea of it being a process and it being an exploration, and an exploration of self as well. I think when you speak to when I started this journey, and when I speak to a lot of people, it's actually very, very hard to articulate the kind of stuff, the deep stuff, the purpose, the direction stuff. People kind of feel it a bit sometimes,
because
they don't really live it.
It's very chaotic. It doesn't make sense. It's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got.
I want to touch, because there is something I would like to recommend strongly. Because talking about this idea of success, I love what you said about success and failure, success and not making mistakes. There is masterclass. There is this website called Masterclass, where they do different masterclass from different people. I strongly recommend to check out Sarah Blakely, who is the founder of Spanx. She speaks about exactly that, and she said that her father, which I think is absolutely brilliant. Usually parents will ask, how did it go to school? Did you get good grades, and blah blah blah. Every day when she was a child, her father asked her, "Where did you fuck up today? What didn't work today?" And that was a celebration. And what a beautiful way that to educate towards real success. I think it's brilliant. It's a great masterclass. Would I very strongly recommend.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we have got a question. If anyone else has any questions, please do share them. And I'm gonna summarize a little bit. So really, so the question from Patricia. So thank you very much for your question. Is what is a sustainable mistake versus a kind of constant, ongoing mistake? And I really like, how can we become mistake gardeners rather than mistake warriors? I think that's an interesting one as well. So yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the question, so I will let you go first.
Well, I think I'd go at the question as you understand it, but okay, I'll have a go. So I think there's something really interesting in that idea of mistakes and sustainability, and I think that's related to success in a way. The flip side of efficient success is sustainability, but if we're too efficient, we don't make the mistakes that open up the opportunity. We end up in this place of diminishing returns. And again, it's that balance of like, what's an existential risk? What's a mistake that's going to be completely overwhelming, personally, physically, whatever? Or what's a mistake that we're going to learn from, and we're going to enjoy learning from, because it's in a space that's meaningful to us. It's actually pushing the boundaries of our knowledge, and probably pushing the boundaries of knowledge in general, really. There's something really interesting in that for me. So how about you?
The thing that comes up for me is coming back to the container, to the structure of things. I think, I wouldn't want, if I need to have a heart surgery, the surgeon to call all his mates. They're like, haven't you, let's see what's going on. It's not the right place for that. And a lot of us have these moments in our businesses that are crucial. And obviously, we shouldn't play with those. My question to everybody, including myself, is how much in my schedule do I dedicate to free flow, making mistakes time? And what if we do dedicate an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a week, a day, whatever you choose, to allow yourself in this space where there is no risk of hurting anything or anyone? Let's just go for it, and invite your team to just go for it, to not block any ideas as much as they're crazy, on an individual level, on a team level, on every level. This is where great ideas will come from. And a lot of times we bang our head with the same kind of thing, trying to find solutions, and we find kind of solutions, but they are band-aid solutions. Sometimes we need to take the arm out, like take it out and put something else instead, and it works better. That was very cool, but I think you know what I mean.
I get what you mean. I think that really plays into the second part of the question about that, because for me, the gardening metaphor is very much about kind of nurturing and systemic change. You can't make a plant grow. You can't force it to grow. You can create a situation where the kind of plant you want is likely to grow, but that's about it. And the mistake warrior, I think, is really that fighting against the possibility that we might make a mistake, and in doing so, fighting against the possibility that we might learn. I think there's something, maybe not consciously, and one of the interesting things for me in that is, how we are driven by fear, and how our fear of making mistakes, being seen as weak, being seen as different, being seen as whatever it is that bothers us, is actually driving a lot of this need for the certainty that makes us, first of all, want those immediate solutions and not feel comfortable putting in the time for something new to grow. And second of all, wanting that for others, for those we care about as well.
Yeah, I love what you said about immediate solutions. It rings a bell very much, because I think a lot of us are just looking to change things quickly. And again, it's this desire for comfort. It's like, my John Wineland, who was my teacher a lot with the work that I've done with men, has this slogan that he said, and again, sorry, I'm going to swear again, but he said, "Fuck hacking, go deep." And I think I really love it, because we are constantly invited to, let's solve the problem quickly, learn from my mistake, and I will make it easy. It can work for certain things, obviously, but if you are more interested in creating a real business that will resonate with you, instead of just something that is nice, if you want to create a life, for me, it's more than the business. I love also what you said before about connecting between work and life. For me, it's unseparated. To live a meaningful life, a life without regrets, we need to go deep. We need to learn by ourselves. We need to make mistakes. We need to say hi to fear, and become a friend, and learn how to play with it, fear and pain and all these things that exist in our lives, whether we want them or not. Avoiding them, it's such a stupid thing to do, because they're going to stay. They're here to stay.
Yeah, we're not getting rid of them. And I think that urge, and that as relates to comfort, really, one way I think of comfort is as numbing. Numbing kills the joy as much as it kills the pain. We can't selectively numb, and it kind of has this habit of spreading outwards as well. We kind of need others to support us in it. It's energetic, it's hard work. I think one of the interesting things we've been talking about is this hard work, and the fear, and the fear of what we might encounter in this space, and what makes it safer. And for me, there's something really interesting in work terms, what this means for us as work. And a lot of the audience are people who do this kind of transformation work, or who are interested exactly in this kind of work. And for me, there's something really interesting with solutions as being very much recipe based. Very much a series of steps that you follow, and that assumes that you know where you're starting, really, and you know where you're going to get to, and that I, as the authority figure who wrote the recipe, know that and wrote these steps, and that if you don't get there, there's something wrong with you. That's the implicit assumption as well. And for me, I think it's actually much more helpful, because we do want to give people some structure. We do want to give people an entry point into our way of thinking, and a defined space, so it is safe to play in. And because that, for me, that's the essence of it. If we don't have boundaries, it's not fully safe. We do need a boundary to make us safe, and ultimately we do have an existential boundary. And I think over time the work is probably to edge towards that and feel comfortable with that as a boundary. But that's for most people, that's literally a lifetime's work. But for me, it's this concept of a framework, and a structure that gives you an in, gives you a sense of what it's going to be like, gives you an idea of why you might want to take that risk and engage and play, and that you can do so freely is a really important one. So yeah.
No, it's interesting, because when you spoke about it, what really came up for me is crop, which is a method that I work with, which is very much that, actually, when I think about it. It's, in a way, I never thought about it like this, but it is an invitation for you to make your own mistakes. And so the crop, if I need to put it really quickly, the idea is, how can, from all this noise of our life, can we crop our lives to what really matters to us? And it comes from the CROP, which is the C's, cleansing and clearing. That's where the majority of the work is done. How can I clean and clear my life from all those messages and things that dictate what I'm supposed to do, even though it's not really what I want. And it comes in pieces of information that I read or check out. It can come from foods that I take in that are not good for me. It comes from people around me that hold me back. So clearing all that space from your life, from these influences, then you can start to connect with the R, which is reconnecting with your inner voice. This is where I'm starting to discover more who I am. And from that moment, it's kind of, for me, you need to take it more on board with you. This is where I'm kind of going to be with you and check out. But once you do the cleansing and clearing, you reconnect with your inner voice, you go to the O, you have better ability to observe your life and to see, like, why am I saying this? Why am I thinking this? Why am I being like that? And to make better decisions. And you can twist it better for yourself because you know better who you are. And that leads us in the end to the P, which is the play. So I've done the cleansing and clearing. I reconnect with who I am. I start to observe life on a deeper level. Then I can start playing with life. And other than the cleansing and clearing, which is very kind of, we have to look at what is and disconnect, the rest of the pieces will be very much an individual journey, which is the beautiful thing about it. And there will be mistakes, and we're going to celebrate them. And there will be things, many moments of like, I don't know. And that's great.
I think that I really like, the summary of a framework as a, an invitation to make mistakes, as a space in, I think that's a wonderful summary of what a framework should be. I think it really captures the essence of that for me. And I think one of the really interesting things, we've spoken about vulnerability and we've spoken about physical sensation and pain. And for me, we certainly in Western society, we have this idea of the pain being a negative thing. It's actually negative. That we don't want pain, which is a very interesting perspective because there are a small number of people who have a genetic variation where they don't feel any physical pain at all, and they don't usually live past their 20s. It's not actually, you think, wow, that would be amazing, right? If I didn't feel any pain at all, wouldn't that be great? And then, well, actually, no, these people have to be extremely careful because they just don't know when something is hurting them. And I think we do have this really strong innate sense when we can learn and trust and develop that trust in it, to know what's good for us and good for other people and what isn't good for us and what isn't good for other people. But it is felt, it's not clear cut, and it is exploratory, and it is messy at the edges. And this idea of mess is a big thing in my work because it plays into the idea of complexity and interrelated things that feel like a knot. We pull on one thing and another thing moves, and you pull on that, and they're different every time. And so much of ourselves and our social spaces are very much like that. And when we work in this space, and when we're doing this kind of work, we are absolutely working in this space. The rules are different. Rules are different to the ones we were trained to, and trained is a very interesting thing, in the gardening metaphor as well. Training is forcing a thing into a specific shape, whereas which may or may not result in it being able to fully express its value.
Yeah, I have many doubts about that. Yeah, you spoke about the word fear in the beginning there, and that made me think also about how much of the fear that we experience is real, and how much is a Hollywood production of our mind that takes an idea and just makes it so much bigger, and we shrink. And that's the thing. If we allow that fear to dictate what we do, then we are being attacked by this Hollywood film. But most of the times when we take the little courage that we need and we set the right container in the right environment where we feel trust and safe to go in it, a lot of times we notice that this Hollywood production is actually a little kind of charity neighborhood TV production. It's very small, and it's our mind is playing tricks on us. And it's like, it's something that I remember in a way. Well, again, I don't want to go over spiritual, but all these mega fears, they don't really exist. The thing that we imagine there doesn't really exist. So it's important to remember that when we get overwhelmed, when we get scared, to understand, okay, I just need to find my way. Embodiment, the word that you use, there are techniques and breathing exercise. You just go for a run for 2 minutes, it will evaporate, it will go away. And as important as that, it's important also in the moments, because we all have these moments, those days that suddenly everything works. And like, oh man, I'm great. Like, I'm the best. Like, and all this bullshit. The same as not ignoring, but understanding that the fear is a cloud that will pass. Remember that because we think that I got it, that's it, life is sorted.
No, I got it. Yeah, no, I understand. It's all going to be easy now.
Moments as well, you have no idea. And in about a week, you're going to feel the overwhelm again. And these waves will just continue to happen. And that's what I'm saying. They will happen anyway, whether we pursue and fight for comfort or not, or all these things that we spoke about. Those waves will happen. And it's like, what's my relationship to those waves? Am I those waves? Or am I observing this? And I'm like, okay, I know who I am. I know what I want. Let's ride the waves then. Very different texture of life, I believe.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that we do, to on some very real physiological level, live in a kind of hallucination, a model, because we filter, and perceptual filtering is a huge thing, and it's based on what we think is going to happen and what we think we want, and there's so much sensation coming in all the time that we're just dropping away all the time, and so we can't really directly control what we don't know. And I think this is a really interesting thing, this step into the unknown. I've got a couple of comments that I'd like to share around that as well. So yeah, if you've got any more comments, please do share. But so one from John McCarthy. So bravo, Yaron. To know ourselves fully, we must seek opportunities to make mistakes. We cannot really know a thing or an experience if we do not go at it fully. We must live deliberately. Yep. And I think, yeah, that's that really feels like part of that to me. That intentional exploration and allowing yourself that is a hugely powerful thing.
It's the way of life, I believe. The only way we should live our lives, I think. Yeah.
And I really like Patricia also shared another comment, this idea of making a bold mistake, which I feel really does tie up in a way. It's allowing ourselves to stand out in our mistakes as well as our success, or perhaps those two things are the same thing again. To stand out in that way, it's a powerful and empowering act.
So great, I love what you're saying, and this is an invitation for everybody who listens. We all have things that we are kind of comfortable and good at and simple for us. How can you therefore use that in order to provoke from others more courage? And I can give an example that I've done many times in my life. I am very comfortable going on stage and speak to audience, and I know that freaks out a lot of people. So on purpose, for many years, I went to these speaking events, and sometimes, they have like the lottery speaker. They have the speakers of the event, but they always ask somebody from the audience who wants to go. And I went and asked, and many times I was picked to go. And I went on stage, and I had no idea what I was going to talk about. And the reason why I did this, I said to the audience, that's what I said. I am here on stage. I don't know what this talk is going to be about. Now, I know that I can improvise it and everything, but I wanted to inspire people. Don't always look to know what the next step is. There is this famous quote, leap and the net will appear. So kind of using my strength, I have been trying and continue to try and setting the containers that I do to invite people, whether if it's family, people that I work with or whoever. Here, I'm doing it. I'm going to the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen. It might be very embarrassing. Let's see. But I'm here, and when we are alive like this, the chances that it will be bad will be bad. So this is an example of what I do, but we all have things in our lives where instead of trying to dictate to the people around us, again, whether it's family or employees or colleagues or whatever, that this is how things are, it's like, hey, I'm inviting you to play a little bit different. Not all the time. In the next half hour, let's do something that you have never done before. And each one of us has something that we can tap into and offer that space to other people. I'm not sure that it was clear what I was trying to project here, but
I love that. I think it's really, really great. The idea of really, that there's there are bad mistakes, the kind we don't really learn from, or that are overwhelming, but that there is this whole area of good mistakes, and we can create that situation for ourselves and others, and use intention and direction to do so. And I think one of the questions I often ask guests is really, what can you stop doing as a result of the assumption disappearing, as a result of what we've talked about, and what can you do instead? And I think I'd like to reflect that back to you based on what you've just said, because I think that's really the question that you've answered really there. If we're talking about, this idea of not making the same mistakes that I did, we're allowing that, first of all, there are mistakes that it's good to make that are the same. And that those are mistakes you may have made before, and they are also mistakes you may well make again. When we say you, in that you should not, how much are we talking to someone else? How much are we talking to ourselves?
Yeah.
There's a huge shame in having made the same mistake. But when we're working in this uncertain space, when we're pushing out beyond, they kind of are the same mistakes, but they're kind of completely different mistakes. And that's what really enables us to learn. And I think, when we don't worry about that, when we let go of doing that, and we create a space where we don't have to worry about that, we can do something much more interesting. We can be much more playful and do something much more exciting.
Yeah. I think this is something that feels important to say. It needs to be felt on a deep level, because I think we're so programmed to think that there is a manual that we're following to do life. You spoke about certainty. Nobody has certainty about anything. Humans were convinced that the world was flat. Convinced, everybody were afraid to go to the edge, and now we're convinced about a lot of things. But if we look at history, things that looked 4,000 years ago, 700 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or 50 years ago, things that now, if we look back, people really thought like this. Oh my God! So who are we? Because in 400, 500, 1,000 years from now, people will look at us doing things that there are things that are very basic. If you think about, we're taking a cow. And I'm not preaching anything to anybody. I just want you to kind of feel this feeling. We take a cow, we butcher them in a certain way, then we take them and we shred them in the machine that goes like this, and then we make it into balls and we eat it. That will look completely bonkers to people in 200-300 years, the same as we now here. But I like to watch horrible histories with my kids. What people did, people will look at the way we do things now exactly the same. So to think that we are so smart and everything is so certain is, again, bullshit. I think to really on a deep level understand and really acknowledge, like, wow, I am living my life literally based on a manual. I'm thinking that this is how it should work. I have never received that manual. I have never seen this manual, but that's how I'm functioning. And understanding this manual does not exist. All those limitations that I'm putting on myself, where are they coming from? And a lot of them, I feel that they are so present and pulling me. But if we look a little bit deeper and wider, they are not there. And we have much more choice than we allow ourselves to be. And that comes to what you said about, it's more about what we should stop doing. Because we live in a world that if we have a headache, or if when I had depression in the age of 19, I was given a pill to sort this. Let's take more things inside to solve the problem. And I'm not saying that pills are not for everybody. Of course, there are people who need pills. I'm not preaching to that. I knew deep in my heart that wasn't right for me, and I found my way without it. And the same thing is like, we need to understand that we need to take things out, to release, and to find more time for myself. To know on a deeper level, who am I? What am I here for? Because on a deep level, there is a mission that each one of us needs to do in this life. And every time we surrender to our fear and we adopt and fit into other things, that's where the fears become bigger, the frustration, the anger, the self-worth judgments, and all these things. the more I disconnect from all that noise, because nobody teaches us how to stop. Whoever tells you to stop, don't do nothing. Doing nothing in Western society, if you find yourself for 5 minutes doing nothing, the level of blame and, oh my God, what am I doing? This is bonkers. This is crazy. So I think disconnecting from all this and allowing yourself to spend more time just to be for a second, it will take time and you'll have to go through a lot of resistance because you've been following that manual for so many years. But if you give it enough time, and if you need some guidance, you can find guidance. Your truth, sorry about the word, I'm not supposed to be on LinkedIn, but your truth will bubble up and you will know much better who you are. And therefore, the mistakes that you're going to make from that point, they become part of this art of being yourself. There are no longer mistakes that have such a negative impact. They're just like, oh, crap. Okay, I'm learning from it. I'll shut up here.
No, that's great. Thank you. Amazing summary of all that we've talked about. And I really want to thank you for engaging with this and exploring this in such a heartfelt and sincere way. And from my perspective, our truth is it does challenge, and that's part of its value. And getting this into the working life, putting this in places where it isn't entirely allowed, where it isn't entirely normal, like LinkedIn, is actually a really important part of this, because that's where it spreads. We talk to people who feel similarly and value similar things to us, but there are far more of them, far more people struggling with this stuff than we see. Living lives of quiet desperation, living lives kind of stuck in this comfort. And the more of those people we can reach and the more of those people we can speak to, not only the happier they are, but the better off everyone is as well. So thank you so much. I hope this has raised some thoughts and questions for you in the audience. It certainly has for me. I feel we could talk for much longer, and sorry for going over slightly, because I really could have had this conversation for hours, which is always a marker of a really wonderful conversation. I think it ties up with so many of the themes that other guests have been speaking to as well, and that we're all kind of working in this very new and exciting direction, and it feels so important and needed right now. And I think the need thing is really interesting, because for me, what I've connected with recently and in doing this work and running these is it's not just about what the world needs, it's about what I need to see in the world as well. And that's letting that happen is a huge thing. So the next episode, which I think does sound rather related, the assumption we're going to be talking about is that good people don't ask difficult questions. And I think, we're asking questions in this exactly, and asking some difficult ones right now. So that will be with Margaret Barry, and that will be at 1 p.m. UK time on Wednesday, the 2nd of December. And you can find links again on the YouTube channel or on the LinkedIn channel or on my website. So if someone does want to get in touch with you, Yaron, how would you like them to do that if they want to continue this conversation and follow up? What's the best way for them to do that?
You can obviously visit my website, which is Yaron Engler, just as my name appears here.com. And you can reach me same with my name on LinkedIn, Facebook. That's the simplest way.
Perfect. Wonderful stuff. Thank you very much for being a guest, and I thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please do share how you feel about it with someone. We've talked about this, and really, so if you feel, if it's worked for you and you want to try it out, just try it out on this particular episode. Share that with someone else, just one other person, and see how it goes. Thank you very much, Jeromes. Thank you for being here.
And absolutely brilliant. And in a way, we walked the talk, because we had no idea what's going to happen.
We did
it, so it's all good. Thank you for
it was great fun. So yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.